Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Bhaja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Bhaja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari
Vikacharya Astutar Srimad HG Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai, ISKCON Founder Charya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Pravikacharya Astutar Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopana Shamakun Radhakun Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Jai, Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai, Ganga Mai Ki Jai, Yamuna Mai Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai, Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Gaura Premanande. All glories to assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we're going to be reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 5th Canto, Chapter 16, Text 22. We'll just read the translation. On the side of Shuparshwa mountain stands a big tree called Mahakdamba, which is very celebrated. From the hollows of this tree flow 5 rivers of honey, each about 5 vyamas wide. This flowing honey falls incessantly from the top of Suparswa mountain and flows all around Ilavrita Varsha, beginning from the western side. Thus the whole land is saturated with the pleasing fragrance. Purport. The distance between one hand and another, when one spreads both his arms, is called a vyama. This comes to about 8 feet. Thus each of the rivers was about 40 feet wide, making a total of about 200 feet. Next one. The air carrying the scent from the mouths of those who drink that honey perfumes the land for 100 yojanas around. Similarly, on Kumunda mountain, there is a great banyan tree, which is called Shata Valsha, because it has 100 main branches. From those branches come many roots, from which many rivers are flowing. These rivers flow down from the top of the mountain to the northern side of Ilavrita Varsha, for the benefit of those who live there. Because of those flowing rivers, all of the people have ample supplies of milk, yogurt, honey, clarified butter, or ghee, molasses, food, grains, clothing, bedding, sitting places, and ornaments. All the objects they desire are sufficiently supplied for their prosperity, and therefore they are very happy. Purport. The prosperity of humanity does not depend on a demoniac civilization that has no culture and no knowledge, but has only gigantic skyscrapers and huge automobiles always rushing down the highways. The products of nature are sufficient. When there is a profuse supply of milk, yogurt, honey, food grains, ghee, molasses, dhotis, saris, bedding, sitting places, and ornaments, the residents are actually opulent. When a profuse supply of water from the river inundates the land, all these things can be produced, and there will not be scarcity. All this depends, however, on the performance of sacrifice as described in the Vedic literature. Anad bhavanti bhutani prajanyad ana sambhavaha yagnad bhavati parjano yagya karma samunbhavaha. All living bodies subsist on food grains, which are produced from rains. Rains are produced by performance of yagya, or sacrifice, and yagya is born of prescribed duties. There are the prescriptions given. These are the prescriptions given in Bhagavad Gita 3:14. If people follow these principles in full Krishna consciousness, human society will be prosperous, and they will be happy both in this life and in the next. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaisnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganutam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pradan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishnakam Vitam. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hare Priye Ancha Kalpati Bishcha Kripa Sindhubi Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadadhara Shivas Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So during Rath Yatra, I had a realization that all the devotees, they were doing their part in trying to make this festival very nice. Our Bhakta Kevin, Mahabhara Prabhu, and even our Bhakta Chris, they made a nice khichdi. Mahabhara Prabhu, he helped with the breakfast. And then Dimitri from Russia, he moved all of the Sankirtan paraphernalia to the van, loaded it up. And so on our way to Rath Yatra, Maharaj, my spiritual master, is the Holiness Badrinaran Swami Maharaj. He was just appreciating how the devotees, they take time out of their busy work schedules to try to make this a nice festival. And you always hear that the Hare Krishna movement is a kitchen religion, right? Kitchen religion. And so it made me think of when you're in the kitchen, three things can happen. One, you can either cut your hand or cut your finger. Two is you burn your hand, or you put salt instead of sugar. And all of us, we've had that experience before. And so a few days ago, I burned my finger, and it's not very nice. And something so simple like this finger of mine, it made it very difficult to tie my dhoti, to hold something. So similarly, this finger, when it doesn't do its duty, it just kind of stays on the side. It doesn't do its function. So the living entity, we're part of Krishna, and we are meant to serve the whole. So I was thinking about that. This finger, it's healing right now. And in a few days, it'll start doing its regular function. So the conditioned soul, we need to purify ourselves, then we can serve Krishna. And one of the best ways to purify ourselves is chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So when we become useful in Krishna's service, we have value. But if we're not, we're pretty much useless. And Srila Prabhupada, he would emphasize we're living an artificial life of luxury. If you look around, everything's artificial. Our friends, the type of food we eat. You know, it's very sad, but I heard in Japan, even their marriage is artificial. They're marrying robots. And this idea of social media, people have 100, 900 friends, but how many of them do they really meet? See, and another thing is video games. People are spending 5-6 hours looking at this TV screen, computer screen, and that's such a waste of time. And we all know that the human form of life has been awarded to us through after 8,400,000 types of bodies. We're finally awarded a human birth. But what are we doing with it? We're playing video games. We're making so many nonsense. And if our desires are with Krishna, then it makes more sense. Just like a servant, when he knows his position, he can enjoy the same facilities as the king. He can eat with the king, he can go around with the king, he can basically live like a king. But when that servant has this strange idea that, you know, I want to be king. Why should he be served? I want to be served. And then he gets in trouble because that servant, that's not his dharma or his constitutional position. See, Srila Prabhupada, he made a good emphasis that the living entity were eternal servants. We must be serving somebody. Just like a mother serves the children, a wife serves a husband, the husband serves the wife. And Srila Prabhupada said, if we don't want to serve anybody, we get a pet cat or a pet dog and we serve that. So by nature, we must serve someone. But that perfection of service is towards Krishna. Krishna is our best friend. He's our life and soul. And the other day, I'm not going to name any names, but this devotee, he was asked to lead kirtan. And when I was in the kitchen, he said, I called all my friends and family, and I told them that I led kirtan. And so this other devotee told him, oh, Prabhu, we shouldn't be so proud of this. You know, because Krishna, he doesn't like when his devotees to become proud. We should always remain humble. Humility is what catches Krishna's attention. And another example of this is when the gopis, when they're having the Rasa Leela dance with Krishna, some of the gopis became very proud. They said, just look at us. We have the association of Krishna. And then Krishna, as soon as he knew that, he disappeared. See? So similarly, we shouldn't be too proud of our services or anything like that. And there's a nice, funny story. And when we were speaking about this digital age, the father wanted to talk to the son. So there's all these social media. And so the father said, son, I want to speak to you. And the son said, no, I don't have time. WhatsApp me. They're living in the same house, but the son is saying, WhatsApp me. And when I have time, I'll reply to you. So this is Kali Yuga. Everything's artificial. And nowadays, see, we make fresh, real flower garlands. And when I go out on book distribution, sometimes you'll see people wearing fake plastic garlands. They want to imitate. And so there's another story of a 8-year-old boy. He locked himself in his room. He wouldn't come out. So the father was knocking, son, open the door. And the son, he didn't want to. He said, no. So the mom tried knocking again. And the son said, no, I'm not going to open the door. So they kept knocking. And eventually the son said, I'll open the door on one condition. If you buy me a personal laptop. Just see, an 8-year-old boy, he wants to, he's arguing with his parents just because he wants a laptop. Instead of learning transcendental knowledge, instead of learning Bhagavad Gita, instead of learning who Krishna is, we want to take our attention towards something else, something mundane. And it's interesting because nowadays 7, 8-year-olds are being diagnosed as depressed. 8-year-olds. So 40, 50 years ago, this was unheard of. Depression, suicide. And like I said, it's because Srila Prabhupada, he said, we're living artificial lives. Electronics, gadgets, all this and that. And I was just thinking too that when I go out on book distribution, when I tell people the interesting knowledge in these books, are not interested. I asked them, what are you going to do with your time? And this boy said, I'm going to go play video games. Actually, a few days ago, there was a big Pokemon convention, you know. And there was this elderly lady. She was on her phone and she was swiping. It looked like she was playing. So I said, no. I said, excuse me, miss, are you playing Pokemon? And then she proudly said, yes, I'm playing Pokemon. And I said, please, you know, you should give these books a chance. And she refused. So in the previous verse, it says, Manda sumanda matayo, manda bhagya hi upadrutaha. So there's a word, it's called, let me see, manabhagya. So that means unfortunate, right? So manabhagya, it means they're unfortunate. Srila Prabhupada uses this example that in this Kali Yuga, all of us are poor spiritually. And when someone offers you $1 billion and you refuse, doesn't that make you unfortunate? So when we distribute these books to people and they say no, they're unfortunate. I was distributing books in La Jolla Cove and I asked this question, what makes you unfortunate? And I explained this analogy. And the lady, she said, so this is worth $1 million, huh? And I said, yeah, these books. So she took a few books, she gave a donation, and she walked away. So there's a few people that are interested in spiritual life. And there are, just like they say, Bhakti or love of Krishna is a science. And with every science, there's regulations, you know. You have to do this, you have to do that. So we practice regulations, rules and regulations, in order to get the result. It's actually true. And so the 4 regulative principles are no meat eating, no intoxication, no illicit sex, and no gambling. And associating with the devotees regularly. You know, when you ask devotees, hey, are you associating with the devotees? They say, yeah. When you go in details, it's like once a week, once every 2 weeks, once a month, once every fortnight sometimes. And when you ask them, are you reading Srila Prabhupada's books? They say, yeah, I'm reading. And then when you go further into details, yeah, I'm reading once a week, every 2 weeks. So these are the instructions. And when we don't follow these regulations, we won't see the results. There was this lady, she said, I just missed, I wish I was in Lord Ramachandra's pastimes, which was from another yuga. And this devotee said, why not Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was an incarnation of Krishna that came 500 years ago. He himself was Krishna. And so this devotee was saying, Lord Chaitanya's Leela pastime is still going on in today. So we're part of Krishna, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes. This Leela is still going on. So it's whether we want to take part of it or not. And he mentioned that the leaders, they need to lead the people towards spiritual advancement. But the leaders of today, they're very demoniac, they're godless, they have no interest in Krishna consciousness. They want people to, let me see, what's that saying? Live it up, to accumulate as much wealth as you can, to get as many things as you can. But ultimately, at the time of death, we can't keep any of this with us. We can't keep our wealth. It's funny because sometimes when I speak to people on book distribution, they seem to be so proud. I'm a financial advisor, I'm a banker, this and that. So when I ask them, if you made billions of dollars and you put that in your bank account, how much would you be able to bring with you in your next life? They stay quiet. So I tell them, you can't bring any of this with you. So I tell them, then what happens at the time of death? What are you going to do? And they still don't have an answer for that. So people are lazy, munda. And, the devotees, they're very attractive because they have nice qualities, they can speak nicely. On top of that, they can actually give value to people's lives, to other people's lives. You tell them who you are, what the goal of life is, how to attain that goal, why is there so much suffering, and what is the solution to the problems. In the 4th canto, I was just reading that the whole earth belongs to the Brahmanas, or the Vaishnavas. And the Vaishyas, or the Kshatriyas, the kings, the leaders, they're the bankers. See? And whenever the Brahmins, whenever the devotees need something, they should supply. So they're actually holding everything for us. And there's a nice pastime. When we make Krishna the center of our lives, it's successful. We become happy. So there's a fruit seller. This fruit seller, in the Vedic days, they would use a bartering system. Instead of paying money, they would trade. So Krishna saw his parents, they would trade grains, food grains. So when Krishna saw the fruit seller, he ran. He was a little baby boy. Krishna ran inside, and with his little 2 soft lotus hands, he grabbed as many rice as he could. And he came running. And little children, they're very, what's the right word? They're not able to control their hands yet. So all of these grains that were falling in between his hands. And when he came outside, he only had a little bit of grains in his hand. But the fruit seller, she was so attracted to Krishna, how beautiful Krishna was. So she wanted to give as many fruits as she can to Krishna. She kept giving and giving and giving and giving. And she saw that Krishna was happy, so she herself was happy. And when all of her fruits were gone, she picked up her fruit basket and it felt heavy. So what happened was, since Krishna was satisfied, Krishna filled her fruit basket with priceless jewels, gems, gold. And so that means that when we please Krishna, Krishna will reciprocate with us. And not only that, but Krishna gave her something more valuable than that, which is love for Krishna, love for himself. There's a nice story regarding this, that if we do any service to Krishna, Krishna doesn't forget. There was a devotee in the early days. He did so much service for Srila Prabhupada, for Krishna. And one day he went missing. So the devotees, they went looking for him. They couldn't find him. They kept searching and searching and searching. And they found out that this devotee, he was in old people's home. What had happened was, this devotee, he developed Alzheimer. He couldn't even remember his name, his address. He didn't know who he was. And when the devotees, when they went in the receptionist's hall, they asked the receptionist, can we see this person? So the receptionist asked, are you family? What's your relation to this person? So the devotee said, no, we're from the Hare Krishna movement. So then this lady's face, she lit up and she said, I want to tell you something. Although this person is basically like a vegetable, there's one thing that he always does. He gathers everyone in this hall and he tells them to sing this mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Although this devotee had forgotten everything, that's one thing he never forgot, the holy name of Krishna. So Krishna is so kind, even though our memory may be lost, our intelligence, Krishna gives us his holy name, and that's all we need as devotees. Krishna's name is not different from himself, and Krishna is perfect, everything. And so that's Krishna's mercy. And in the Bhagavad Gita, it says there is no loss or diminution in this endeavor. So whatever we do in Krishna consciousness, there's a permanent value in it, unlike material things. And in the Western, we're actually deceptive. We think we're very opulent. But in the verse here, he was talking about Srila Prabhupada. He said real opulence means grains, dhotis, saris, things like that. So everything's artificial now. And in the past, people ate off gold plates. Now we're eating off of paper plates. In the past, women, they wore gold ornaments. Now, people are wearing plastic. Plastic earrings, plastic jewelry, plastic everything, plastic surgery. The whole world is made out of plastic now. And in the past, the country's wealth was established on gold standards. Now, it's paper currency and credit. I was, when His Grace Vijay Prabhu, when he first came here, I had the opportunity to go on book distribution with him. We were at Seaport Village, and I was able to see Vijay Prabhu distribute books. So when people didn't have money, they would say, "Oh, sorry, I don't have cash." And Vijay Prabhu, he said, "It's okay, this is the age of plastic." So they pulled out their credit cards, debit cards. So it's true. This is a artificial living. And if you see the junkyards, they're overflowing with old cars. All of these machines, all of these things that we thought they were important, they're now collecting dust because they have no value. Material things has no value. And it's described that sannyasis and brahmacharis in the Vedic culture were considered the son of the grihastas, the sons. And so, but the sannyasi, they're the spiritual master of all the orders. I was distributing books yesterday, and I met this nice lady. She was going through difficulties, you know. I thought it was financial, I thought it was, you know, family crisis, but she considered this to be the big problem. So I asked her, "What's wrong?" And she said, "I broke up with my boyfriend." This is the big problem in Kali Yuga, relationships. They believe that they can't live without someone else. And so she was saying how the guy was very wealthy, he was this and that. So I told her, some people are so poor, all they have is money. You know. And so I told her, if you want to see how wealthy you are, you count the things that you have that money can't buy. You know. And I always like to tell this story. I had a friend, and the girl broke up with him. So in order to try to get this girl back, he started naming things that he had. I have a BMW, I have a big flat screen TV, I have a king size bed. Like that was supposed to impress the lady. So it's so this Kali Yuga, it's a very funny age that we live in. And so Manda, Sumanda Matayo, Manda Bhagya, Hi Upadrutaha. People are lazy. Srila Prabhupada, he translates Manda as lazy or slow. In this Kali Yuga, everyone is not interested. They're lazy, not only when it comes to material prosperity, but also spiritual activity. There's this one, I was distributing books in La Jolla, and when I asked him, "Do you have time?" He said, "No, I don't have time." I said, "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to go look at the seals." So instead of, talking to a devotee about spiritual knowledge, he would rather go and look at seals. And what are seals? They just look like a big blob of, fat. And not only that, but the La Jolla Cove, it smells really bad. There's all these bird droppings, and you can smell it like a few feet away, yards away. And Srila Prabhupada, he says that not only are we slow or lazy, but we're also lazy or slow in age, duration of life, and intelligence. The duration of life in Kali Yuga is very short now. It's 100 years at most. In different yugas, the duration of life was 100,000 years. And every year it progresses, it decreases 10 times. 10,000 years, 1,000 years, and in this age is 100 years. And Srila Prabhupada, he uses the example of if we are meant to live 100 years and 50 years of that is spent sleeping, we have 50 years. And from 1 year to 10 years, we use our time in playing. So that's another 10 years wasted. And from 10 to 20, we spend that in relationships, romance. And from 20 to 30, we're spent working. So we actually have about 20 years or so to practice to perfect devotional service, but we're wasting time. And we're so unfortunate in this Kali Yuga. I was distributing books, and there was this lady. I asked her, if I offered you $1 billion, would you take it? And she said no. And I said, why not? And she said, that means that I'm more valuable. And I looked at her like, really? So people are unfortunate these days. When you offer them something very valuable, they have these weird ideas. And we're always disturbed. There's 3 types of miseries. Adhyatmika, Adhibhautika, and Adhidaivika. And I'll explain them. Adhyatmika means body and mind. Suffering or miseries caused by the mind and the body. Just like depression, suicide, these are all miseries caused by our own mind. And I met 2 families yesterday, and they told me that each family, they had a son that committed suicide. He took his own life. So these are disturbances. And I met another elderly lady. She said that her nephew called her and said, I'm going to kill myself. So these are big problems, but they don't address mental health. And then there's Adhibhautika. Adhibhautika are suffering caused by other living entities. Just like we could be sitting here, we could be meditating, and then a little ant bites us, or a mosquito bites us, or a bee flies, so we can never be peaceful. And then the third one is Adhidaivika. These are natural disturbances caused by the demigods, like floods, earthquakes, things like that. So we can't stop these. And above these 3 miseries, there's the 4. Birth, disease, old age, and death. And when I go on book distribution, I tell people that these are not good. They ask me to explain. So when one takes birth, we're in a very airtight sac. We can't breathe, and worms are biting us, and we're rolling around in stool, urine, blood. And when we first come out, what happens? A doctor slaps us. Welcome to the material world. And I was hearing a class, and this devotee said, when a child takes birth, there's 2 people that are anxious, waiting for the child to come out. The parents, and then Maya. She's waiting. Please come out. So every birth that we take, we forget our previous birth. It's so painful. But Krishna, he kindly takes that suffering out. Do we really want to know how we died in our previous life? How we drowned, how we burned to death, how someone stabbed us. There's so many ways that we've lost our body in the past. And when I was distributing books yesterday, I met this nice young man. He was telling me he was working for $1 billion industry, but it didn't make him happy because he knew that he was working so hard just to make the upper-ups more wealthy. So now what he's doing is he's a teacher, and I asked him, why did you change your profession? And he said, because I want to help people. So it's natural for the living entity to help others. They say that we always see three types of people. One that has more resources than us, one has equal resources than us, and one that has less resources than us. A materialistic person, when he sees someone with more resources than him, he envies him, becomes jealous. And when he sees someone equal to him, he competes with him. And when he sees someone lower than him, he cheats him, he exploits him. Although a devotee sees these three things, he reacts differently. When he sees someone with more resources, he takes guidance from him. He serves him. And when he sees someone equal to him, he makes friendship with him. And when he sees someone lower than him, he tries to elevate him, he tries to help him. So Krishna consciousness is the only solution to the problems, actually. Like Balaram Prabhu, he mentioned in class that the whole world, there's so much racism now. And why? It's because they're thinking they're the body. I'm American, I'm Russian, I'm Ukrainian, I'm Mexican, I'm Filipino, I'm Christian, Muslim, Buddhist. These are all bodily designations. So Srila Prabhupada, he says, we're not the body, we're the spirit soul within the body. And it's actually a very revolutionary concept. To understand that all of us are all spirit souls and we belong to the super soul or the Supreme Soul, Krishna. So when everyone transcends these bodily designation, we can be on the same platform. We all know we're brothers and sisters working together to go back home, back to Godhead. And there's a story or a cartoon. There was this skinny little mouse. He was running away from a cat. And the next slide, it showed that there was a liquor bottle. The top was off and it was dripping. So this mouse, it got a taste of this alcohol. The next picture, it showed this mouse very puffed up, saying, "Where is that cat?" So this is called illusion. So similarly, the living entity, we're in illusion, we're intoxicated by material pleasure. And we forget the reality, which is death can happen at any time. Even if this little mouse drank some alcohol, it doesn't mean that he'll be able to defeat the cat. So when we're illusioned, when we're intoxicated by material prosperity, good birth, beauty, high education, we forget Krishna. It's a disqualification. So we should always remain humble before the devotees, before our spiritual master, before Shri Radha Giridhari, and we can help others. Okay, that's all I have. Is there any questions or comments, corrections?
Wonderful class.
Thank you, Master.
Very nice.
Dr. Tyler, Prabhu.
It's nice. Working off those bullet points, each of those was very succinct. That was very organic. Thank you, Govardhan. I had a couple things. You helped me realize something that I learned in class a long time ago. I was taking a history of cinema course, and we were studying the movie The Graduate. In that movie, Dustin Hoffman graduates college. He's from a wealthy family, and he's like drifting after college. He doesn't know what he's doing. So he's at one of his parents' social functions, and he's kind of like the big thing. "Oh, you've just come back from college. What are you going to do with your life, son?" So he's walking around, and all these people are coming up giving him ridiculous ideas of what to do with his life. And one of the dad's friends is like in a suit. He comes up and he's like, "Son, take my card. The future is in plastics." Like this weird line. And my teacher paused and was like, "That's a very significant line." And this movie's from the 60s or 70s. So you kind of helped me realize now what that guy meant by that. The future is in plastics. That's not a good thing. And this guy's presenting that to this new graduate, "Hey, come get involved in plastics. This is what the future is going to be." So Adi Divik, I like that you related back to the verse, because the verse is talking about withholding of rains. I saw a YouTube video of Prabhupada on a morning walk, and he was approached by someone, asked him a question to the extent of what happens if people don't follow the spiritual path, or what happens if we're not, basically doing sacrifices. Prabhupada immediately, just like his truth, was like, oh yeah, the rains will stop, just like... I remember seeing that a long time ago and being like, wow, he knows it. And the YouTube video title was by some karmi, but it said like, holy man predicts future. So I wanted to know about that. Adi Divik, this is a misery, and and if we're doing well, we have all these nice things like grains and rain. So what do you know about rains not happening? Is that a future that we're headed towards? Why are the demigods not pleased by what we don't do, and why do they withhold rains?
In the verse it said sacrifice or yajna is born out of prescribed duties. So when we do our duties in accordance to Vedic injunction, the demigods will be pleased. In the Bhagavad Gita it says that the demigods will be pleased by this yajna. So then they supply the right amount of heat, rain, things like that, vegetation. Maharaj, he told me the story of how, I think they were in France or some European country. It was a drought. There was no rain. And so the devotees, they were performing Sankirtan. And after a few days, so before this, a reporter asked, what is this chanting going to do? So the devotee said, we're going to make it rain. So they started chanting, and the reporter, she was very hesitant, she didn't believe in this. So a few days it started raining, but only in that particular spot where the devotees were chanting. So, yeah.
You helped me realize something else too. The Native Americans had what was called a rainmaker, like a medicine man, and he would. But if he's invoking, spiritual prayers, the demigods are pleased, the rains will come. So it's not so far out that they could actually do spiritual practices and the rains come. And that's a death knell for us not to get rains. And that might be a way we can help prove Krishna conscious to non-believers as a science, where they're like, it's a drought there and they need it. And we go to kirtan and it comes. Also, for the people that might be listening or don't know, this is talking about grains as well as being so fortunate. What's the difference between a karmi grain and a grain that becomes prasadam? It's a grain. Visually, it doesn't change. I mean, it might be cooked, but what's the difference between a boga grain and a prasadam grain?
The only difference is if it's offered to Krishna. Boga or, fresh foods that's not offered to Krishna, it's boga. But when it's offered to Krishna, it becomes sanctified, it becomes spiritual food, it becomes prasadam. So that's the only thing. If you offer nice food to Krishna, Balaram, he gave this other talk, how, wealthy people, they have so much money, and they have a little altar in the closet. And what they offer Krishna is like candy, like that. So instead of offering nice food stuff, they offer Krishna in this closet, candy, all these other small things. Sugar, yeah. Sugar cubes, yeah. But themselves, their family, they're feeding them opulently, But to Krishna, the one that supplies everything, they're not giving to Krishna.
And it's easy to follow the regulator principle for diet if we only eat prasadam, because we only eat what Krishna eats, so everything you eat is 100%. That's why visit our restaurants, people online. Yeah, come, you're eating prasadam, everything's okay. You don't have to think about the food in terms of, should I be eating this? Yes, you should be eating this. And when you come to our temple, eat as much prasadam as you can, and we serve it all day long, so please visit us. Take prasadam.
When I first started coming to Krishna consciousness, I would always hear, has this been offered yet? See, because the first thing a devotee does is he offers everything to Krishna. The food, his mind, everything, his words. So, yeah. Vijay Prabhu?
Also, if one doesn't perform sacrifice, then you don't get rain. But also if people are sinful. Like I grew up in Los Angeles, went there in '69. There was every year we get so much rain. It would pour down rain like anything. Here in San Diego also. But now, even in the rainy season, we may get some sprinkle, a little bit of rain, a few days of rain. So also people are so many sinful activities, so Krishna's withholding. Another thing interesting that happened in the Midwest, there's a big drought, about 5 states. And one devotee was on an interview also, a radio interview. And this person, the interviewer, he said, so what is the result of this chanting? He said, well, You're having a drought here. If everybody chants Hare Krishna, it'll rain. So you're saying that if everybody on this radio program chants Hare Krishna, it's going to rain? I said, yeah. He said, all right, everybody, let's give it a try. What do we got to lose? So he chanted Hare Krishna, and he had big, number of people. I don't know, thousands and thousands of people. They chanted. And that night, it poured down and rained for 3 days, just pouring down rain. So a lot of people got some faith in Krishna from the sacrifice of chanting Hare Krishna.
Balaram Prabhu.
Yeah, I was just thinking about, because you mentioned how there was one vegetable seller or fruit seller, no, not vegetable, fruit seller, and Krishna came and gave her, a few grains, whatever he had in his little hands. And then Krishna was walking away, and then this woman, she looked at her basket, and it was full of jewels. And you have the story of a Sudama Brahmin who was awarded, or you could say given by Krishna, a big palace and so many things. And also Dhruva Maharaj, although he wanted this big kingdom, and then eventually saw Vishnu or Krishna, and then he was fully satisfied, and he didn't really want anything else. Prahlad Maharaj also. So you have a lot of these devotees who, from the descriptions, it doesn't, there's no description that they actually want it, or they're like desirous of it. But still, Krishna gives it. Of course, you could say, okay, he gives love of Krishna, which is more valuable than anything, the most valuable thing. But then someone would say, well, why didn't he just give love of Krishna? Like, why does he have to give all of these other things? You could say, like, material things. So maybe you could just comment on that, or if there's also you or others in the room have some ideas or comments. Why? What's the need of that? What's the need of Krishna doing that?
So I read that Srila Prabhupada, he would say that Krishna would fulfill both material and spiritual desires. So a devotee can live nicely in this life as well as the next. And so we should be careful with what desire we have. I forgot who gave the class. I think it was Vijay. Whatever desire we have, Krishna will fulfill. So, yeah. You have anything to add, Laura?
Well, I'm thinking, because a lot of people that are reading Bhagavatam, they have material desires still, and so when they see a bunch of factual jewels appear, it's wow, right? It's like a clear example. Like we were told this person's experiencing prema or ecstatic love of God, but when we hear about them rolling around on the floor, like when we hear about the actual symptoms occurring, it's impressive. So it's kind of like a visual, because you get, and then they got pure love of God, and you're like, oh, that's great, but a big pile of jewels, right? Someone's like, wow. Look at that. That really is amazing.
Yeah. Well, one thing, Krishna, he's not trying to fire people up to, okay, I'll worship Krishna because I'll get something, material opulence or this and that. But anyways, I guess people could try to see that like that. But, one thing is that Krishna, he may give these things, but one reason he gives them is that he knows the devotee will use them properly, not misuse them. They'll use them properly. And aside from using them properly, Krishna knows that the devotee will not just use them properly, but use them for the best purposes possible. Just like Srila Prabhupada, you could say that, why did Krishna give him so much material opulence? Which he did. Money and this and that, so many things. Because he would take that and use it properly for the best possible use. Means the best possible use, meaning, for the benefit of other people. So that's one thing. And also, you could say that Krishna teaches the devotees, Krishna teaches the world through his devotees. Means Krishna may give all this material opulence, and then let's see how the devotees use it. Let's see what they do with it. And then in this way, people are taught, the right path. So, anyways, Yeah.
That reminds me, you were going to say something?
Great to know that I'll know what to do with the big pile of jewels when, like, I'll do what the fruit seller does when I get my big pile of jewels. That's
Maharaj, he was telling me this pastime of when Maharaj was a temple president in Detroit, he was working with another devotee, I think his name is Govardhan. And there was this bhakta, he would come in, from college. They said, please take prasad, things and that. They were treating him nicely. And Maharaj, it was in the winter season, they needed to install what they call storm windows. I guess it's like 2 different types of glass for insulation. And so when they did research, it was like thousands of dollars. So they said, how are we going to afford this? We don't have this type of money. So when they were discussing this Bhakta, his name was Bhakta Al, he overheard and they said, hey, what are you guys trying to accomplish? So Maharaj said, oh, don't worry about it, there's nothing you can do. So the Bhakta, he left, and the next day there was a contractor, he was measuring the windows and everything. And then so Maharaj told me, hey, what are you doing, and then so this contractor said, oh, we're going to install storm windows. So Maharaj was thinking, we don't have the money to do this, And then so the contractor said, no, it's already been paid for. So they looked at the receipt and then said, Alfred Ford. Yeah. And then so they said, Alfred Ford, he's the grandson of Henry Ford. So they couldn't believe it. And then so, he said, okay, go ahead. If you think that's paid for, go ahead and do the work. So while this was going on, Maharaj, he realized, who's Alfred Ford? So this Bhakta came, and then he said, excuse me, I have a quick question. So I said, is your name Alfred Ford? And then Bhakta Al, he said, who wants to know? And then so anyway, long story short, Alfred Ford, he said, I didn't realize who my friends were. Everyone wanted my money. Everyone wanted to go on vacation, like that. But when I met the devotees, they didn't want anything from me. They didn't even care who I was. But they simply wanted to give me, prasadam. They wanted to give me knowledge. They wanted to treat me like a real friend. So Bhakta L. Ambrish Prabhu. Yeah. Okay. Any other?
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Hare Krishna, we have a question pending on the Zoom.
Okay.
Govardhan Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Vijay Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam. Prabhu, my question is, will I have to take birth again if I do not live a life of sacrifice? And if your answer is yes, the follow-up question is why?
So in the Bhagavad Gita, it says that acts of charity, sacrifice, and austerity should never be given up. It purifies even the great souls. So actually, we should not be concerned with either taking birth again. In Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Shikshastikam, it says, I don't want fame, I don't want wealth, I don't want a beautiful wife, I simply want to be engaged in your devotional service birth after birth. So that means that we should not even care about being liberated, we just want to make sure we're in service of Krishna.
Yes, Prabhu. Wonderful answer to my question. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Vijay Krishna. Okay.
You're welcome.
Dimitri from Russia, he's making breakfast, so we'll have breakfast now. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.